Well, hello there. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name is Kimberly. I've been gone for a long time. And you might be wondering, what the hell? Or you may just be like, who are you? I don't really care. I have been away for a while, mostly just due to having a lack of time to devote to putting out new content. Unfortunately, sometimes passion gets overtaken by work, but yeah, here we are. As you could probably tell by the title, I want to talk a lot about nail care. And the reason that I want to talk about nail care is because I tend to see in other breeds tend to have a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to nail care. And one thing I've been finding about Bull Terriers is they don't get as much wiggle room in regards to nail care. And what I mean by that is Bull Terriers tend to have a lot more problems a lot sooner than other breeds of dogs. For example, other breeds of dogs, I mean it depends on the breed, but for a lot of other breed of dogs, you can kind of let the nail go for a month to 2 months without issues. With Bull Terriers, you tend to start seeing a lot of issues pop up after a month. The longer that you let them go, the faster issues pop up. People sometimes get annoyed at me in Facebook groups, in Bull Terrier groups, when I tell them when they're having foot issues with their Bull Terriers. They're having, for example, yeast in their Bull Terriers between their toes. They're seeing little wounds in their Bull Terriers' feet. One of the first things that I say is check the toenails and get the nails down farther. And people tend to take this as almost an insult, and that's not how I mean it. Okay, one of the things I want to say right now is, trust me, I truly understand that nail care can be extremely difficult. It can be extremely stressful, not only on your dog, but definitely as the owner, it can be extremely stressful on you. I've had Bull Terriers that have just gotten so worked up over having their nails done, and I've just felt like I'm between a rock and a hard place, to the point that it has brought me to tears because it's stressful. I mean, it is. When you realize how many issues can stem from overgrown nails, or nails that you wouldn't even in a million years imagine are that bad, and suddenly your dog is having foot problems and pain, and you realize that it's from their nails because something came up, you overlooked it, you didn't have a chance, or maybe you just absolutely dreaded the stress of having to tackle your dog's nails. I get it. Another thing that I want to say is there's no judgment here, okay? I don't want you to feel like I'm judging you if your dog's feet get to that point, because honestly, my dog's feet have been to this point, and I'm going to show you in this video. Nickels, for example, okay, so all of my dogs, I start them on getting them desensitized to having their nails done from the first day that I get them into my house. So with Nickels, I brought her home at 10 weeks. The day that I arrived here, I started desensitizing her to the Dremel, and she's only ever had positive interactions with the Dremel. I am very proud of myself in boasting that I have never seriously quicked a dog. One of the things that I'm also proud to say is that I understand and I pay incredibly close attention to the way that I manipulate my dog's legs, their joints, for example, how much pressure I'm applying and holding their paw still, and pinching toes. I'm extremely aware of this because Caesar has always had back issues, so I've always been very aware of the way that I'm manipulating his body when I do his nails. And I don't rush. So with Nickels, as an example, she was great. She used to just lay in my lap like a baby, and I would feed her treats while I would do a nail, feed her a treat, do a nail, and she laid there and loved it. I ended up getting sick, very, very sick. I was practically bedridden. I wasn't physically able to do anything for several months. When I went to go do her nails again because they had gotten overgrown, suddenly she had an aversion to it, and she has had that ever since, and it's been 4 years now. And I've been incredibly patient and positive and upbeat with her with it, but for whatever reason, she just doesn't like it anymore. I completely understand. Some dogs just don't like it, and sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. But at the same time, it still needs to be taken care of. Expect this video to be lengthy. Honestly, I didn't want to do lengthy videos when I very first started my channel. I know I can kind of chatter on, but at the same time, I feel like I would much prefer to do lengthier videos to get the full amount of information there, instead of trying to condense it down and make it more difficult for people to understand. Something that I want to try to explain here to people who may not understand the importance of nail care. So I'm sure people all recognize that when a dog's nails start to curl under and they're putting pressure on them, how that can be painful, or we've all heard the stories of nails growing into the paw pad, and people think that it's not a concern until it gets to that point. And like I said earlier, with Bull Terriers, you tend to, or at least that's something that I've been seeing a lot of over the years, is you tend to see issues pop up sooner than you would with certain other breeds. And the reason for that, in my own general opinion, so I believe that to be for two reasons. Number one is the shape of a Bull Terrier's foot, and number two is the way that they move on their feet. So if you look at a Bull Terrier's foot, Bull Terriers have what is known as cat feet. That is in the written standard for the breed. And what that is it is a very tight, compact foot. So that tends to be short toes. Obviously every Bull Terrier is different, but that's generally the standard of what the breed is supposed to be. Similarly to like the egg-shaped head, they have a set standard for their feet. So you see what the cat foot, which is very tight, short, compact toes. That's not to say other breeds don't have cat feet. There's lots of other breeds that have cat feet. With Bull Terriers, one thing you tend to see a lot of is they tend to push forward, they tend to lean forward, they tend to put a lot of their weight into their toes, up on their toes when they are forward. So if you ever look at them standing, a lot of times you'll see that they roll their weight forward onto those front toes. You can kind of tell this when you look at the front toes versus the rear toes. So a lot of times when you look at the back feet of a Bull Terrier when they're standing, their back toenails will be the same length as their front toenails, but a lot of times the back toenails will be up off the floor and the front toenails will be into the floor. And other breeds of dogs that have what's known as hare feet, where they have longer toes, they tend to distribute their weight more evenly on their foot, so they'll distribute it from all the way from the back of the pad to the front. And by doing this, it causes the toenails to grow more outward. Before they hit a certain point, then they start to curve down. With Bull Terriers, you tend to see those nails, as soon as they come out, to start curving downward because of the way that they put a lot of pressure, their weight, they roll it forward. So they tend to cause those nails to grow down and under. So that's why a lot of times when you see in other breeds, you'll see the nails, they have some leeway before where they can go out before they start to curl down because of that. So as long as it takes their nail to get to that point, can be a month, 2 months, 6 months. Whereas with Bull Terriers, from the moment that nail comes out, it's almost automatically starting to curve down and under. That's why you don't get a lot of time in between, because that nail starts to hit the floor at that point. But at the same time, in the rear feet, you will tend to see that not happen quite so much, where the toenails don't quite start to curve yet until a little bit later. So that's why a lot of times you will see Bull Terriers with harder nails start to curl under like this. Now, the importance of nails being up off the floor is very obvious. If you think about your foot, okay, and when you walk, if you can imagine your nails even touching the floor, that when your nails hit the floor, they're going to push up, right? So you put your weight down and that is going to cause it to go up. So you have those toes pushing up. So imagine you're trying to walk with your toes being forced up by the floor. Okay, you can't put a whole lot of weight on them because the floor is pushing them up. It's the same with dogs. When those nails start touching the floor, it's going to start causing those toes to go up. Now the body works pretty much, it's all connected. When your toes start to get pushed out of alignment, it can go right up and a lot of times into your spine because of the way that your vertebrae are. It can cause early onset arthritis because of that. So if you think about how people with back problems, they'll tell you, get good supportive shoes, get shoe insoles for your back, and you'll do tests for those to see how you distribute your weight on your foot and where it needs support. Well, it's kind of the same with dogs. When you have those nails that are causing the entire foot to go out of alignment, you're gonna see, there's a potential to see some issues within the spine for that reason. Now, another thing that I want to tell people is, if you look at your Bull Terrier's foot, look at their front feet when they're standing. And a lot of times what you'll see is those front two toes, which are the ones that are more forward than the other two. When you see those front two toes, a lot of times you're gonna see one of those nails start to curve the toe to the side, even if there isn't a whole lot of length on there. And that's for that reason, because the Bull Terrier, the way they distribute their weight, so even if that nail isn't quite touching the floor just yet, you're going to start seeing curvature in there. And that's also the reason why, in general, you don't see it as often in the back nail, right? So another thing that I want to touch on is, I had mentioned earlier about yeast and foot sores. Another thing I want to talk about that people tend to talk about in Bull Terriers is like calluses. I see a lot of people complain about calluses on their getting overgrown on their Bull Terriers' feet. Now this is something that kind of hurts my heart a little. So I see a lot of Bull Terrier people in groups talking about how Bull Terriers are prone to hyperkeratosis. Now what hyperkeratosis is an actual condition, and what that is it causes an overgrowth of like callousing tissue. So it causes an excess in hardening on the paw pads, and it can be fairly common in certain breeds. But here's the thing that I want people to understand is, if you see this buildup on your Bull Terrier's foot, before you go and put your dog on medication to deal with this, or before you go to your vet to get cream to eat these overgrowths away, I want you to look at your Bull Terrier's paw pads. Where is the sickening located? Because if your dog actually has this condition, it doesn't discriminate on the paw. It's going to grow all over the paw pad. So you're going to see spots on the bottom of the dog's paw pads. You're going to see spots on the back feet of the paw pads, not just the front ones. Now I see a lot of people who say, oh, my Bull Terrier has this. But at the same time, when they show the paw pads, they only have the overgrowth along the edge of the paw pads on the front or the back. Now generally, if you have the toe, I mean, you gotta kind of remove a finger, but if you are seeing it along this side of the paw pad and this side of the paw pad and the toes, but you don't see it anywhere in the center, I'm going to go out on a limb and say your dog does not have a medical condition, and I'm going to tell you that you need to get your dog's nails down just even a smidgen, because what's causing that is the nail, when they step down and when they walk, is rub, 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 rub. Now this is what calluses are. Calluses are a natural protection of the body. if you have blood flow to the surface and there's a lot of banging and rubbing and hitting and pressure, it's going to build callus to help protect. That's what calluses are designed for. That's why when you work a lot with your hands and they get all tore up, you're going to start building thickening of the skin. But a lot of times, like I said, you won't see it in the back as much. Only if the nails are getting quite long. And that's because, like I said, the way they're rolling on their toes. So if your Bull Terrier is having a lot of this excess thickening, I just want you to pay attention to that. Because if your dog has hyperkeratosis, it's not going to discriminate. It's not going to be just along the edges. It's going to be all over the pad. So if it's on the bottom of the pads, then you can say yes. Yes, my dog has hyperkeratosis. So let's talk about yeast, okay? Yeast is from excessive moisture. So yeast is a fungus and it's naturally found on the skin. You find it everywhere, everywhere, because it likes warmth and it likes moisture. Usually a secondary condition, because yeast rarely just spontaneously grows on dry, healthy tissue. For dogs, a lot of time yeast is from licking and just having that constant moisture there. Dogs will lick to relieve pain and discomfort. So if your dog's nails are just uncomfortable to walk on, even if they don't look that bad to you, like I said, there's a lot of wiggle room for other breeds and not as much for Bull Terriers. So if your Bull Terrier is licking, you're going to see yeast build up, and then it gets itchy, and then it creates the cycle of itching more and more and more. Mosquito. So if your dog is licking, you're going to see yeast. And you have to find out why the dog is licking to begin with, right? So look at your dog's feet, look at your dog's nails. Another thing that people seem to get very angry at me about is when they have Bull Terriers with wounds. You'll see them. Usually you see them between the front two toes of the front paw, and a lot of times you'll see swelling that burst open with little bits of pus. I'm going to tell you right now, I've seen it firsthand. As soon as I get those nails back just even a smidgen shorter, that's gone, and I don't see it anymore. And again, that's because those front nails, remember how I talked about how they'll curve over? When they're curved over into that soft tissue in there and they rub and rub and rub and rub and rub, it causes a bit of infection. It causes swelling because that's some very sensitive tissue in there. So if you're seeing those wounds, especially in those front toes, start with a good nail routine, but just try to work on getting your dog's nails down. Please. Please, okay? Alright, so I wanted to do a voiceover for this part where I show you how I do Druid's nails, just because I figured with the Dremel running it would probably be a lot more difficult for me to talk and pay attention. So I want to reiterate some things. So one of the things, when I'm going to say something such as applying pressure. Now what I mean by applying pressure isn't necessarily applying pressure with the Dremel. I'm also talking about applying pressure when I'm hanging on. Applying pressure means that if she is pulling, I'm applying pressure either to hold her foot steady or touch her with the Dremel. So applying pressure just means doing something that is going to potentially cause a reaction. She's in her harness. I'll leave a link to the harness in the description below if you're curious about where I got this, what kind of harness it is. So first, Druid, she's pulling. And I have the Dremel running and I'm touching the bottom of her feet to kind of desensitize her to that sensation, because I don't want to risk accidentally injuring her by applying the rotating Dremel to her foot when she's struggling. So I want to make sure that it's safe for me to do that and make sure that she's not going to pull too badly. And as you can see here, when she starts to pull back, I'll go back to just sort of desensitizing her to that sensation. And as you can see with my hands, I'm not squeezing her foot real hard. I don't have a death grip on her here. So I just do the Dremel a little bit. One of the things I like to do is I'll use the Dremel just a little bit and then I take the pressure off, even if she's not struggling. because that kind of teaches her that that pressure is going to move away and is going to stop before she needs to pull back. So she doesn't feel the need to pull back every time she feels it, because she knows that eventually it's going to end, even without her struggling. If I only stop applying the Dremel to her toe when she struggles, that actually will teach her to struggle, to stop the Dremel. So I will do just a little bit and then I'll take it back. Wait a second. Do it again before I stop again. And I am a person who tends to use lighter pressure with the grinder, with the Dremel. And the reason for that is because I do not want to accidentally hit quick. I do not want to accidentally cause injury. So here you can see that I'm getting the nail. I feel to make sure there are no sharp edges, especially on the back feet, because your back feet is the one that the dog is going to use to scratch themselves. So I want to make sure that I round out all those edges really, really nice. And as you can see here, she's starting to calm down. So I apply the Dremel, take a little bit off, pull it away, apply, take a little bit off, pull it away. And that way, like I said, she gets comfortable knowing that it's going to stop without her feeling the need to cause it to stop. So we're going to do this, and I apply, just see how gentle that I apply that pressure. Now here I wanted to show, she actually had, as you can see what I was talking about earlier in the video, how she has that nail, and you can see that little bit of rub from that nail from her walking. So as you can see, that nail, and her nails really aren't that long. Like I said, I do their nails twice a week. So her nail really isn't that long, but just what I was talking about earlier about the foot shape and the nail shape of those front nails and how they move. So right now, as you can see, she's a lot more particular and a lot more fussy about her front foot, just because she has that wound. So I'm trying to be as gentle as possible in the pressure I applied, because as you can imagine, it's pretty sore. So I try to just very, very gently take just little bits off with that Dremel, and just try not to apply too much pressure, but it's also very important that I round that nail specifically out so it doesn't get longer and make it worse. So just little bits of pressure. I use my fingers to rub to kind of reassure her that just because she feels a sensation doesn't necessarily mean that it's dangerous or it's bad or it's scary. It may just be my fingers. And that's just essentially how I go through with all of her nails, is I try not to go for excessively lengthy sessions. I apply gentle pressure. I'm very, very careful in how I manipulate, and I'm very mindful of how her joints, I try not to pull on their legs in awkward positions. I try to make sure that I'm not causing any reason for this process to be uncomfortable. I'm trying to keep it as comfortable as I possibly can for my dogs. And I like to go lighter on the pressure, because I would much prefer having a little bit lengthier of a session than to accidentally cause pain by taking too much nail off. So if I have to take a break in between, I would much prefer that than to have my dog be scared and upset because I accidentally took too much nail off, or I accidentally, ground down their skin, because that can happen if your dog is struggling and you're trying to really force that Dremel up there to get that nail off. Sometimes they can cause the Dremel to grind their skin. I've had that happen to my fingers before, and trust me, it's not pleasant. You're basically skinning yourself, and it's not fun. So that was just kind of a just real quick and easy. So you feel your dog pull back. Try to pull the Dremel back. Once your dog is still, try to pull the Dremel back before they struggle. That's not always going to be able to happen with some dogs. Some dogs, you can be standing there for 10 minutes while they're pulling and yanking and pulling and yanking. But if you can get to a point where your dog learns that they don't have to pull back because that Dremel is going to remove pressure before
they have to pull back, then they never quite learn that they have control over that, and they tend to relax because they know that the pressure is going to be gone in a second. If they can just wait for another second, it'll be gone before they need to react, and that's something that I really, really like to teach them.
I know this is a lengthy video, and I know some of you are probably going to be upset and tell me that maybe I'm full of shit. I'm not saying that your dog can't have legitimate foot problems aside from nail problems. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that I've seen a lot of people who would rather put their dog on heavy-duty medication than to admit that their dogs needed their nails done more often. I just don't like seeing people throwing medical conditions around when things could potentially be more easily solved with simply a better nail routine. Because I genuinely don't think people realize some of the consequences that you can see with bull terriers and having lengthy nails. And like I said, this isn't to shame anybody. It really isn't, because if you look at other breeds, you don't generally see these kind of issues with them until it gets really excessively bad. We tend to not realize that in bull terriers. You know, the reason that I know this isn't because I'm perfect and have kept a perfect record. This isn't why. The reason that I know this is because I've dealt with these things. Anyways, I apologize if this was such a lengthy video, but I really hope that you guys got something out of it. I really hope that this was helpful for you, and I hope to be posting another video here in about 2 weeks. So, see ya! Don't forget to check us out and follow us on Facebook. If you are into this type of content, please consider subscribing.